Ah man, new day, new page. So, here at the top, you should already recognize all of this. Dai Ichua, bosses, Mew. It's just a repeat of the title of this chapter. Where we're actually going to start is right here. We've already gone over Sonna. If you were paying attention, then you should already know what this means. It means like that. And if you were paying attention to when I was explaining the ko, so, a, do pattern, then ko, na should make sense. Instead of like that, it's going to be like this. Easy stuff. Easy start to an easy page. However, simplicity kind of stops there, because next up we've got this character here, which I'm sure a lot of you smarty pants out there are already saying, oh, it's wind. Oh, that's wind. Oh, that's kaze. I've studied that before. Except it's not. This kanji actually has two different meanings with two different readings. So it is not kaze or anything having to do with wind. This is hu. Now, admittedly speaking, this is one of those times where having the furigana above the character really, really helps out. But if you know enough Japanese or if you've seen enough examples, this becomes really easy to see. Obviously, we're not talking about some kind of wind. We are talking about this kanji's meaning, which is like a way or a style. In English, having these two together creates kind of an awkward situation because we would never say like this style or like this way. But the implication here is what you should be paying attention to, not the exact English meanings. So this way or this style or in a way like this or in a style like this is going to be your more literal translation when you see characters like this together. We've already gone over the ni particle a couple of times here. There's really nothing else I need to say about it yet, but I do want to go over a nuance of it, and that is that motion within a sentence does not have to be like physically moving somewhere. It can also be like changing from one thing to another thing, right? So in this case, the ni particle is being used to imply that it should go from the way the kids are currently doing it to this brand new way that Reddo-sama is showing them here. So again, it's not doing something different, but it's being used in a way that you might not be used to seeing. So I want to make it really clear. When you say ni, you are not just implying that something is physically moving from one place to another place. You're also showing like growth, or you're showing something going from one way to being another way, right? It is sort of moving in that kind of sense, not just moving physically. Next up, we've got the na particle. This is going to be a little bit of a strange one because I will be completely honest with you. Even though I've gone through this manga multiple times, I'm not totally sold on which na is being used here because there are two different possibilities. The na that I think it is, that I'm pretty sure it is going to be the sentence ending na particle, which is basically sort of another offshoot of ne. We're kind of dancing around the ne sentence ender with other ones like ze and na. It does the kind of same thing where it's like agreeable. It does kind of the same thing where it's like it's being agreeable, but it's also kind of for yourself, right? I know that sounds kind of confusing. Let me explain. You can use the na particle in any place where you would normally use the ne or the ze particle. But when you say na, even though you're saying something that you expect the people around you probably agree with, you're not really looking for them to respond back to you anyway, right? When you use na, you're saying it and you expect that the other people around you are paying attention and listening to what you're saying, but you're not really looking for a response from anybody. You're kind of just saying it aloud. In a kind of weird way, it's kind of like a combination between ne and yo, but I digress. That gets into some kind of like etymology stuff. I don't really want to get into it. Just know that na can be used anywhere where ne or ze are used, and it means the same thing. But when a character says it, they're normally, even though it means like, you know, it kind of doesn't really expect anything from the listener. It's kind of just declaring it out loud and making sure they're paying attention. Okay, brand new word for our vocabulary. We have iku. This is a word that you've probably seen once or twice, or maybe even heard if you're somebody who watches a lot of anime. But iku basically means to go. Alrighty, next up we've got yet another verb ending. That's going to be the ro ending. And to save us a little bit of time here, I went ahead and just got the goon squad out. So Nomu, Taberu, and Suru are ready and waiting for us. In order to use command form with group 1, we need this character to shift into its ending character. So mu becomes me. Su becomes se, nu becomes ne, mu becomes me, so on and so forth. It should be pretty simple. Step 1, shift to Step 2, add ro. Nomero is going to be your word for drink, but like yelling it at somebody. Funnily enough, there is more than one way to shout a command at somebody in Japanese, but just keep this in mind as like the baseline form for right now. Taberu, think you can handle this one on your own? Oh my gosh, you're so smart. That is right. Drop the ru, add ro, and you're good to go. Tabero is like yelling eat at somebody. What kind of weird and wacky tricks has Suru got for us? Well, it's going to do what it normally does. Suru becomes she, and then we add ro. Shiro is like yelling, do it at somebody. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Okay, I don't have that much restraint, guys. At this point, you might be asking yourself, oh my gosh, senpai, what are you talking about? There's no ro in the bubble that we're currently looking at. Oh, you sweet summer child. Well, you see, in Japanese, when you are using the command form with a group 1 verb, it is very, very common to leave the ro off. But why is that, senpai? I don't know. But you can just yell nome at somebody to command them to drink, you know? This doesn't normally happen with the other ones. You could hypothetically just yell tabe at somebody and they'll get the idea. But tabero is usually the one that you go with. However, nome is going to be just fine here. So here, instead of yelling ikero at somebody, just yelling ike, and I'm sure ike is something that you have heard in an anime or a video game, okay? When somebody is going real fast at something and they're yelling ike, then that is what's happening there. Next up, we've got ourselves yet another Pokemon name, Nyorozo. Unfortunately, this one isn't going to be quite as simple as Mew's name because this is going to be completely different. As you can see here, Nyorozo is the name of Poliwhirl. I'll be real with you guys. I actually don't know all of the Japanese Pokemon names or why they're called what they're called. So I went ahead and looked into it a little bit here so that I could teach you guys what all of these names mean. So here is Nyorozo. There's an onomatopoeia in Japanese that is basically like the physical embodiment of a sound, right? And it is nyoro nyoro. Nyoro nyoro is like to like slither or like to wriggle around in kind of an unnatural way. And since this family of Pokemon are all like toads and they have really slippery skin, that is where their name comes from. So Nyoro is going to be in the names of all of them. Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath all have Nyoro in their name. Poliwag is Nyoromo because it comes from Kodomo, right? So it's replacing Ko in Do with Nyoro. So he's like the kid wriggler. And then we've got Poliwhirl, who is Nyorozo, and Zo, as we've talked about before, is like yelling something. So he's like absolutely wriggling or like totally wriggling. And then when we get into Poliwrath, you know what? I'll go ahead and save that one for you. Okay, believe it or not, we're at the end of yet another panel. So take a moment, gather your thoughts, go over everything that we've talked about so far, see if you can translate the panel. I'll be at you with some translations in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, translation number 1, keeping it very, very simple here. Do it like this is basically what the character is getting across here. Ike is go. Nyorozo is the name of the Pokemon. Super, super simple. Cleaned up a little bit. Here's how you do it is going to be a bit better here, although there should be an exclamation point. Not that it matters too much, but Character is basically trying to show these kids how to do it. Here's how you do it is something he would yell here. Let's go, Nyorozo. That sounds a little bit more like somebody from the Pokemon franchise would say. So again, very, very simple, but cleaned up slightly. And finally, for our rewrite here, we've got Red saying, "I'll show you how it's done." Because again, I want to keep that arrogance that he has. That's what makes him such a fun character to watch. I'll show you how it's done. I feel like that gets his personality across really well. And then, of course, instead of just saying go, I have him saying, "I choose you, Poliwhirl," because this is something that you hear in the Pokemon franchise a lot. So I think it fits this situation pretty well, although I don't really know how we're doing on space there. But I decided that when I do the English rewrites, I'll also use the Pokemon's English name, and that is what I've done here. Now that we've got our Poliwhirl out there, we've got to have him do something. In this case, it's going to be the Mizu Depoda. So, Mizu Depo. You're going to get 2 words here for the price of 1 because this, technically speaking, should just be 1 word since that's the way it's being used here. You'll see that it's in these quotation marks, meaning that it is the name of something. Mizu means water, as you've probably already guessed. Depo is actually the word tepo, which means a gun. Mizu Depo is literally speaking the word for water gun. And then of course the da there at the end just says that like that's it, as in that's the move I've selected. The move I've selected is Mizu Depo. Alrighty, I know it seems pretty simple, but every panel counts. I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, translation 1, literal. It's Pokemon's name of the attack, simple stuff. The da is really unneeded. We don't really need to translate it here. I think it's totally fine without it. Cleaned up, I'm basically just specifying that we're using the move Nyorozo, use water gun. Again, exact same idea gets across, but this sounds a little bit more natural. And then for the rewrites, I mean, I feel like all these are going to be so simple, so I tried to get a little bit more complicated and nuanced with this one with a give him a water gun, Poliwhirl. Again, I'm trying to capture the essence of like early 90s shonen anime here. Give him a water gun. That's the best I can do here. Okay, these next 2 panels are just action panels. Don't really have much that we can translate here. So Nidorino gets hit with the water gun. And oh my gosh, it's super effective. Look at, he's just, oh, look at those eyes. Definitely not having a good day today. Finally get to the next panel and oh my gosh, these toddlers sure are impressed with the, with the way we use our Pokemon. So the word hayai is an adjective, you can tell because of the ending, and it means fast. There's also a version of hayai that means early, but that's not the one that we're using here. This hayai means fast. Next bubble, ano, you should remember this. Kono, sono, ano, and dono. So that blank, blank, blank over there. Whatever it is that we're talking about off in the distance, whatever word is attached to ano is going to go in this space right here. Next Pokemon name is going to be a little bit disappointing. It is just Nidorino. There's nothing special about Nidorino's Japanese name, but I will teach you a little bit about where it comes from. So Japanese orchids come in 2 colors. You've got blue ones and you've got purple ones. There is a Pokemon type in Japanese known as Nidoran. Comes in both male and female. The female ones are blue, the male ones are purple. This is where the ran in Nidoran comes from, is the fact that these orchids also come in blue and purple. As for the Nido is basically a take on needle. So needle becomes needle, and then ran becomes like the word for orchid. So needle orchid is basically where this one's name comes from. According to what I've read, the rino part in Nidorino comes from the word rhino, like the Spanish pronunciation of the word rhino. So needle and rhino are where it gets its name from. Regardless, Nidorino is just called Nidorino in Japanese. Next word, hiru. Hiru means to be like dizzy. So this is a kind of a weird one. It's not necessarily dizzy, but it's like when you've got hit with something or like something like knocks you out and you're kind of like stumbling around and you've kind of lost your grip, you've lost your balance. That's hiru. It's basically like the next stage would be like to be knocked out. That's the basic idea that they're getting across is hiru is like when you've been hit with something and like you're just like dizzy and stumbling around. That's hiru. Well, dang, here we are again at yet another panel to translate. So let's go ahead and get to it. This will be our final panel of the day. Pause if you need to. Go over what you've learned. I'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alrighty, translation 1. I probably could have explained this a bit better, but in Japanese, when you just blurt out an adjective, it's kind of like saying like, "Oh my gosh, it's so," and then whatever the adjective is, right? So here, hayai is kind of like saying, "Oh, it's so fast, like unbelievably fast, like so fast that I can barely comprehend how fast it is." Again, you can do this with every single Japanese adjective. So if you just yell "oki," it's like, "Oh, it's so big, I can't believe it. It's blowing my mind how big it is." Or "takai," it's so expensive. I wasn't expecting how expensive it would be. That's the exact idea here, right? So hayai is like, oh, it's so fast, he can't comprehend how fast it is. Uh, Ano nidorino ga hirundazo. So that nidorino is totally knocked out. Again, the totally comes from the nda here. She could have just said, Ano nidorino ga hiruzo. It's knocked out. But no, she's really emphasizing just, oh my gosh, it's so out of it. It's so knocked out right now. Okay, translation two. So I'm getting a little bit more into the details here. This kid says, "Oh, that was fast." Basically, giving us a little bit more detail as to exactly what he's calling fast. He's calling that situation fast. And then the girl here says, "That Nidorino can barely stand up." I think emphasizing like the after effects of the battle get across the exact same point. So when you say like hiru and then you add nda and zo to emphasize just like how completely and utterly outmatched this Nidorino is, I think kind of showing the effects of the battle like this, sort of literarily, get across that exact same point. But I like this image a lot more, where they're like, "Oh my gosh, he can barely stand up," to kind of show just how effective the water gun attack was. And then, of course, for our rewrites, we're cheating a little bit. Again, we took the word hayai out completely and just had him say overall ready, because, of course, if the battle was decided in one single shot, then of course he would be surprised at how quickly it's over. So I think this gets that idea across just as fine as talking about how fast it was. And then for the girl over here, he took that Nita out in one shot. So I like the idea of her being more impressed with just how quickly the Nidorino was taken out, just like this kid is. I think saying took out that Nidorino gets the idea across that it is Hiru right now. And then, of course, the fact that she is so emotional about it, like because she just, her mind is being completely blown right now by how quickly this guy was able to take out the Nidorino, saying that he took it out in one shot. That's the part that she's impressed by. So that's the part I want her to emphasize. So, yeah, well, look at you. We're almost done with yet another page of the Pokemon manga. Hopefully, you're having a good time. I know I am. I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to do the YouTube things, and happy studying.